Welcome to a new episode of the Ditch the Dad Fat podcast. I'm Andrew Jacks from Six Pack Dad. Today's episode is going to be a really practical one, especially if you're a busy dad that might have some level of back pain. It might be a little bit, might be a lot, but this is something that I do see all the time. I sometimes have a little bit of back pain myself. And if you're sitting at a desk all day carrying extra weight, if you've got low energy levels and your back is constantly tight, sore, or just not right, it does affect everything with your mobility, with your day-to-day functioning, how you move, how you feel, and how you show up at home and at work. And if you're exercising too, it definitely takes its toll there. So I wanted to bring someone on who actually understands this properly. He's a specialist at it. His name is Dr. Eoin Everard. He's joining me all the way from Ireland. He's also a serious and avid runner. He can tell you about his records and his accolades there if you're interested. He's also a physio therapist, a Pilates instructor. He also has a PhD in human movement, same degree that I did here in Australia, but he's done it at a PhD level. And he's also the founder of the BackAware belt, which we'll discuss later on as well. But today we're going to keep things simple. We're going to be keeping things practical as well. He's going to give you some awesome, useful tips, talking about what actually causes back pain, why your morning routine matters more than most people think when it comes to back pain and back mobility, and what you can start doing straight away to improve it. So Eoin, appreciate you coming on today. Is there anything I've missed so far from the introduction?
No, that's good, Andrew. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Great. Awesome. Well, why don't we get into it and tell me, how long have you been working with people with back pain and physiotherapy?
So basically I kind of started in about 2009 after my degree. I was working as part of my placement. I was working in Canada in Montreal, and they were looking at movement assessments, and it was this idea of sometimes the problem is not where you think it is. So if you have pain in your back, it could be coming from your hips or your upper back. And that really just struck a chord with me that, oh my God, that's really that part that I felt like we were missing. So that really got me, since then, on that trend of assessing movement and looking for other areas where the problem could be coming from, not just the area that is presenting with pain. So kind of since 2009, worked with kind of very high-end teams. I lecture as well. And then, as I said, I've had my own clinic and I've invented the BackAware belt. So it's kind of since 2009 I've been working on this stuff.
Okay, great. And so since then, my main audience, or the guys listening to this podcast, would mainly be 35 plus years old fathers typically, and a lot of them are working a desk job as well. So they have a sedentary type job. What do you notice the most with those type of guys in terms of back pain?
That's the two things. One, when you're sitting a lot, it can then, you're kind of putting pressure, say, on the discs or the ligaments of the body. And then sometimes, as you said, if you have people who've taken a break from fitness, what can happen is they kind of have a muscle memory or a specific amount of strength or stuff that they would have done in their early 20s. So you combine sitting a lot now, maybe having to drive to work, not keeping, say, good postures doing that, and then jumping back into the gym a little bit too aggressively, focusing on more strengthening stuff like reps of 5 or heavier weights. And then that can lead to a recipe for disaster. So there's kind of two things I think just from the outset that people like that should be working on. First is, and we can talk through the specific strategies. First is, what can we do in work, when sitting, at home, to put less pressure on the back, to take away the pain trigger? Sometimes we call it picking the scab. If I have a cut and I keep rubbing it, it's never going to allow it to heal. And then secondly, in the gym, can we program things to be, as Alva Male would do, get your movement base correctly, make sure that we're moving correctly, getting the core correctly, getting you moving in the right places. Then can you work on a thing called work capacity, or what we also call anatomical adaptation. Anatomy being the body and adaptation being change. So that's more like hypertrophy type training, 8 to 12 reps, maybe up even to 15 reps. What you're doing is, one, you're ingraining better movement patterns, but more importantly than that, what you're doing is allowing the body to change. You're still getting a good fitness stimulus, but you're allowing the body to change and adapt. And you're allowing the body to change and adapt at more appropriate rate, so that when you do then move on in say 2 or 3 months of consistent training, 2 heavier things that you might have been used to be able to lift in your early or mid 20s, your body has adapted to that change. Like I see it, my brother, he has 3 kids. He was a rugby player. He's really strong. And sometimes when I see him back in the gym, he's able to lift, say he does a hex bar deadlift, he's lifting a load, but it's like, you're not, even though he can do it, I don't think he really should do it. He should just go back, do reps of 12, get that consistency. And then, sorry, I do rabbit on, but the last thing I'll just mention, and I'll let you chat then, Andrew, is there can be, and it can happen to me as well, there can be this thing of like, when you're going to the gym, because you know you're not as consistent, you think, I need to get more done today. And that can be a recipe for disaster, because you're like, oh, I don't know if I'll be back here within the next week or next 2 weeks. Let's like really get it. Or maybe you've had a 2-week break and you don't want to take a step back in the reps. I had it for this morning. Like, I built up to maybe like 22s on the kgs on the bench press for me, which is quite good. But I've been back running, so I haven't been in the gym. So it's like soul destroying to go back to 15s. But if I even went to 20s, right now I can get maybe shoulder issues. Now I can get things. So I think they're the main things. One, look at what you're doing in normal day-to-day life to put less pressure on the back. And there's some very simple tips. Second, when you're programming, be focusing more on like 8 to 12 reps, getting the movement patterns down before jumping back to what you used to be able to do when you're a bit younger. And then thirdly, if you are missing weeks, you need to leave the ego at the door and go, look, I need to go back to what I was doing, the 8 to 12 reps. Maybe it's a little bit lighter, and build back up. It's not like, and when those two things there's a lot of science behind that. I won't get into it, but when you have sedentary life, and then if people overly push on their lifts, and if the technique breaks down or the muscles aren't strong enough, you can get these like little small end plate fractures at the, say the disc has a little bit of bone above and below, obviously. And if you get little breaks in that, that's where the disc seems to seep through, and which can cause all the issues with nerve pain and sciatica, etc.
Okay. So trying to compensate can be counterproductive, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. And like, look, I've done it. I'm, like I said, I was an elite runner, and like, I've just made this mistake. I've had to pull up with an injury on Saturday, because I always say you have to start where you are now, not where you want to be. So I had a race, it's on next Saturday, ironically, but say 4 or 5 weeks ago, I had been building back up. I had been training for a high rocks. I was like, all right, okay, let's get back into high-end running. And I knew I was just overly stretching myself, because I was like, look, I used to be able to do this. And I got through like session 1, session 2, but the third session was just like, now it should be okay. My like hip flexor has just gone into like a strain or a spasm. And it's just, now when I look at it, it's like, you know what, I was trying to train where I wanted to be versus where I was. And you need to have that humility of like, okay, you could have maybe lifted heavier in the gym when you're in mid-20s, no children, no real commitments, and you were quite good. Like I was able to do with running, and you have that muscle memory, but that can nearly be a hindrance at times.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about just a typical guy that doesn't do any exercise, that he's experiencing back pain, and he sits at a desk most of the day, doesn't really do any stretching, no real physical activity, no core strength work, none of that. Okay. That's experiencing back pain, maybe a little bit overweight as well, or significantly overweight. Would you say that the extra weight, whether it be on the belly or other parts of the body of a male, adds stress to the vertebrae and therefore adds extra, can be a cause for the back pain as well? Yeah,
not as much stress, right? But what happens is there's 3 systems that keep us, like, we have to have some kind of stability, like otherwise we just collapse on the ground. So there's 3 systems that help that. We have the passive system, which is the discs, the ligaments, the joints themselves kind of like lock into each other. Then you have the muscular system, which is like the muscles kind of support those discs, ligaments, and joints. And you have the nervous system, which is the messenger. It tells us when we're going into like a kind of compromised position, whoa, you need to contract the muscles a little bit more. Just so they kind of dial up and dial down the muscular system. So when you become inactive, what happens is the muscular system is getting a lot weaker. So now you're overly stressing the passive systems of the body, say at the back. And then, so rather than like the girth, it's like the muscles aren't as strong now. So now the passive system, the discs have to take more pressure, the ligaments have to take more pressure. And like there is only a certain capacity that they have. And our injuries, disc pain, facet joints, ligament strains, the things that people present with back pain are all linked to overloads of the passive structure. So if you're overweight, if you're not putting in that pressure, that's going to happen. Now, if you're someone like that, sometimes I find that people aren't really good to do exercises. So the one I try get them to do first, I might just share my screen. We practiced this, so hopefully it all works okay. The one I get them to do first is power walking. With power walking, there's essentially, as you walk and you're swinging your arms, what we're looking to do is, can you still hear me? Yeah, perfect. Yeah, as we walk, it puts an X across the spine because say I'm moving my arm, that goes across the body into the other glute. So when they're moving, it puts this like X or support across the spine, and it's a great little it's nearly like a band. So what I'll try to get people to do is, can they go out for like 5 minutes in the morning or 5 minutes at lunchtime? You know, like before they say at lunchtime, can they get up and walk? Or when they come home from work, can they, before they get even in the door or have a pair of shoes, just go for a 5-minute walk and then increase that to a 10-minute walk. And then that will help your back pain massively, because it starts to strengthen those muscles. It gets that kind of cross chains across the back, and it can really take the pressure off the spine. And what it also helps then, Andrew, I find, is it gets people back into some sort of a routine. Like as you said, if you're not used to doing exercises at home, it can kind of be awkward. You're like, I'm not sure if I'm doing it right. But just swinging your arms and trying to walk fast, one, it's a massive benefit for people with back pain, and two, it's easy to do. You just put on the runners, you just go out for like say 2 or 3 minutes, back to your front door for the next 2 or 3 minutes, and you're taking a lot of pressure off the back.
Okay, so just a 5-minute power walk or a brisk walk where you swing your arms, and you need to swing the arms to get the most effect.
Yes, swing the arms, because it's the cross chains that do that that make a massive difference.
There you go. Okay, so even though you might look a bit funny, guys, just
look, you don't need to be sometimes people have it, you don't need to be going bananas. Like, I'm not expecting people to swing their arms like the military. Just don't keep your arms rigid and try to walk fastly. You don't need to look like you're absolutely power walking. You just need to start to take a little bit of that pressure off.
So first thing, would you suggest first thing in the morning would be most
First thing in the
effective?
morning is the most ideal. Okay. Sometimes if I'm having my porridge, what I will do is put it in the microwave, and from my microwave to my front door, I will just keep walking that. I'll just keep walking that section. So up and down for like even the 90 seconds that takes. Because we can bring this up now, we kind of mentioned, especially with disc pain, right? Overnight, as you're lying down, it's like an accordion. Discs take on extra fluid. So say when you're standing, the disc is this height. And now when you lie down, it's like that accordion, it gets to open up a bit. So now the disc has more fluid in it. So I want you to imagine a plastic bottle. If the plastic bottle is completely full, any pressure on the sides is going to cause that fluid, that water, to shoot out. So very similarly then, any pressure on the front of the disc from bending is going to cause the fluid to push out. And it's the disc that's pushing off the nerve that causes that back pain or sciatica. So what we want to do is reduce that fluid in the first hour. And we also then want to be careful about like our technique in the first hour, because the discs are bigger, they're highly pressurized. So if you power walk, even for that 90 seconds, walk fast, what you're doing is putting that compressive force, but because it's flat, it's not shooting pressure off one way or the other. It's just reducing the fluid in the disc, which then it's like taking water out of the bottle. We can press the bottle a little bit more and this fluid's not going to shoot out. So if we're getting into the car, if we've reduced that fluid, we just have more room to play for rather than we come in. And if some of your listeners are going to know what I'm talking about, where they struggle to put on their shoes and socks in the morning because they have to round or bend, and they probably don't know why it is, but it's that increased fluid. And by the end of the day, if they haven't been sitting, if they've been moving around, it's like, oh, my back's actually not as bad now. Or they'll be able to take their socks off and their shoes off a lot easier.
Okay, that makes sense. So that's something they can do on the treadmill as well, because I know I get a lot of clients from the UK
100%.
that complain about the weather. Okay.
100%.
All right, so treadmill works. Now, if someone didn't have back pain, would there be any usefulness for them to do that as well, in it to be a bit proactive and add some strength as well?
Yeah, exactly. Because what can happen, especially if you have these like, what's it called, like sedentary lifestyle, and then you're trying to lift or get fit. Remember those three kind of systems you talked, that passive system, active system, subsystem. You want to make sure that you're moving in the right ways and you're not like overloading. So the same kind of thing of don't be putting your back under a lot of pressure, then making sure that you develop a well-rounded program with like good movement. And with good movement, sorry, let me know if this is going on a tangent again, but right, with good movement, the body is designed with this thing called a joint by joint approach. So what that means is that at your ankle, it's a ball and socket. It's not a ball and socket joint. It's two joints. It's a gliding joint and it's kind of a rotation. So, but it can roll in any position. Okay. The knee is a hinge joint. It should only flex and extend. You don't want to see the knee buckling in or buckling out. The hip is a ball and socket joint. It's also where the biggest muscles are in the body for a reason, because it's that's where we're really meant to move. The lower back only should have about 4 degrees of rotation at each spinal segment. It does have some flexion, but it's not really designed for that. Then the upper thoracic spine, the upper back is where the bending and movement should occur. Shoulder blades should be stable. Shoulder joints should be mobile. What can happen with modern life is hips get tight, so we can't move through them. But because we're designed like cavemen or cavewomen, you have to be able to move, to hunt, to get out of danger, to get food. So our body compensates. Hence why if you roll your ankle, even though you're not walking correctly, you can still limp around the place, because it's like, this is more important than moving correctly. So good movement looks to restore good movements around the hips, better movement around the upper back, good movement at the ankle. And then it looks at trying to get more stable at the knee and more stable in the lower back. And I will see 80% of things I will see will be related to either SI joint, back pain, or knee pain, because they're the joints that should not be moving as much, but are moving too much. People only starting to get hip pain when it's really getting bad and when things are really tight. But a hip can be tight for a while. It can feel tight but not painful, because you're moving in other areas. And then once you have that good movement, that you're moving well through the hip, ankle, upper back, and you're more stable and better control at the knee and lower back, then start doing exercises for like 8 to 12 reps to get that, like kettlebell swings, even like 20 reps, but with good form, get that kind of fitness, adaptation in the body before you start looking at anything else. And then that has a good programming with less stress in modern life. It's just you're going to get much better results. You're going to be healthier going forward,
Okay. So what are some other tips, simple, easy tips that men can do whilst they're, I guess, at their desk maybe, or during their lunch break, or something that could, if they're, instead of just sitting down all the time and they are experiencing back pain, or just even as a preventative exercise, what are some things they can do even while in business attire that they could start doing? Okay,
I'm going to share my screen again, but I'll talk through it for people who can't see the screen. Okay, so if you can, you should be trying to stand up for 1 minute for every hour that you're sitting down. Just stand up, reaching overhead, because that resets the back. Basically, they've done these studies where people who take little micro breaks, it reduces the back pain back towards zero, versus people who didn't take these back, just kept sitting. By the end of the day, it's a lot sorer versus taking little breaks and kind of moving. Now, it's like if I pull my finger back, if I held that for 8 hours, it's going to be excruciating on that joint. However, if I move it forward, shake it out, and I just do that regularly, it's probably not going to be that sore by the end of the day. The back is the exact same. Sometimes what we start to think is it's some mysterious joint. It's not. The thing that's causing pain, if you can just do a few extensions, stand up if sitting down is causing pain, this will help. Sometimes though, you can be a bit busy to stand up. So what we can do instead is, if you come to the edge of your chair, sit on the edge of your chair and drop one knee to the ground like I've done here. That then allows a stretch through the hip flexor, but it also then puts the back in a much more neutral position. So rather than being rounded, you're back in the kind of original position. And I'll hold that for 2 minutes, type away. I'm doing it right now. You wouldn't realize if I was on a call that I'm doing it. And then I'll switch over and do the same. Other things you should be doing is a rolled up towel. So like when I'm driving, I'm going to roll up a towel, or I have a towel in my car, but you could have a spare jumper. So if it does get cold, it can hold that, because as we see here, that lumbar spine should have this slightly internal arch called the lordosis. So what we want to do is preserve that lordosis, because a lot of times it can round or flex out of that position, and then that puts a lot of pressure on the back of the discs. So if I sit into the chair as much as I can, that then allows me to keep that neutral spine because I have the towel pushed up against me. And then lastly, on sitting, if you're watching TV, as much as possible, if you can lie down. Or again, if you can't lie down, say there's two of you on it, have something supporting the back and try lie, if it's a recliner, lie back as far as you can with that support. But ideally, lying flat is great here, because we can see sitting with poor form can be like 185% pressure on the discs. Lying down on your back is 25%. So it's just taking pressure off the discs. It's stuff that we can do. If you're using a standing desk, if you're using a standing desk, also then just adapting it so that it's in line here, but taking little micro breaks. I'm just going to take do you want to ask me anything about standing first or sitting first before I move to standing?
I'm going to ask you about stand-up desks, because that's what I recommend to my clients.
They're really good.
I did a video on that as well, but sometimes I feel like trying to work out what the best ratio is of standing and sitting, because everyone's different. But for me, I feel like sometimes I get a bit of an achy back. When I start to feel that, I just bring it back down and I start sitting again for maybe 20 minutes and then I put it back up.
Perfect. Yeah. That's probably the best. Like judging if you have that good body awareness, and maybe taking note of how long it was. Say if you could stand for like an hour 20 and then it happened, maybe like an hour 10 you drop down. You can do things of changing the position as well. So like say there I have one leg just behind another leg. I'll have like a foam roller or something that I can put my foot onto, or I can go into like a calf stretch. Or even then I'll have my elbows on the desk and I'm leaning over. But the ideal is having a small chair or stool to sit down. The back can get achy when you're standing for a lot of time. So another one you can do, just maybe once in the day, say at lunchtime, if you're standing at your standing desk a lot, is have a foam roller, put the foam roller at your kind of where your dimples are. So that's the sacrum. And then have your feet on the wall. So we're showing the video of this on YouTube. If people just want to see it, just mark what time this is on the podcast. But that will just give a relief to the back. That kind of lets it just, because that's been stacked on top of each other, just allows that nearly the opposite of the back, just to let it relax. But I actually think what you said is the best thing to do with a standing desk. I like standing desks. And I think the best thing to do is just sit down when it starts to get a little bit achy, 20 minutes, and then stand back up again.
Yeah, great. I use an anti-fatigue mat as well to help relieve it. What do you think of the anti-fatigue mats?
I don't know, to be fair, Andrew, I don't know enough about them to kind of comment. Do you find them good?
Yeah, I just find that instead of having your feet on a hard surface, it just gives you a bit of a spongy shock absorption that relieves the joints, I guess, from all the weight that's coming down.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, sounds interesting. I must look those up and try them out.
Yeah. With the second thing that you mentioned with the seat, with the towel, the rolled up towel, I've seen you can buy actual attachments to the seat with like a
Yeah,
mesh with that. Is that okay to have permanently?
100%. I have those in my car as well, and I have the towel on top of that. Other ones are called lumbar rolls, are really good as well. They're kind of like, yeah, exact same thing. So a lumbar roll, one of those mesh ones that comes out. The one thing I would say is people are like, oh, I have a support in my car, like the seat comes out. Very difficult for those to be in the right position. I find mine is too low. You want to have it in that small of the back, into that arched part of your back. So you want to sit back as far as possible, and then in that lower back, kind of right in the middle of the lower back, is where the towel should be jutting out, and that's going to keep you in that neutral position. So I just find the lumbar supports in cars, it's just very hard to get them right in that lower part of your back. Where a lumbar roll, that thing you're talking about, or a towel, you can adjust that to on yourself. So don't be saying, I don't want someone saying, oh, well, I have the support on my back in the car. I have one of those as well. It's very hard for it to be in the right position.
Okay, fair enough. One way that I've teach my clients with in terms of getting away from your desk, it's a funny one. It's a simple one. Is drinking lots of water forces you to go
really
to the
good.
toilet. So you've got to get up every hour or hour and a half to go to the toilet, and that forces you to do that. So that's a good way.
That's really good, and better hydration. So yeah, two birds with one stone there.
Good. All right, Owen. So something that was quite interesting that you mentioned to me before we recorded this was that there's certain countries that don't have toilets that actually have less back and hip pain. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So like how the hip joint, because it's a ball and socket joint, is actually it's different than the back, which is like you want to get through the full range of motion at the hip. But in countries that don't have a toilet like where we have, where we're sitting at 90 and 90, so 90 degrees at the hip and knee, but they have essentially like a hole in the ground, they actually have less back pain because what they're going into is deep hip flexion like once a day. And that was that joint by joint concept that I said. They're keeping the range of motion at the joint of the hip joint, which then allows them to move better through that joint. What can happen us with our sitting, with lack of activity really, is we stiffen up through the hip joints. And then that means that we have a tendency to move too much with bending, with everything through our back. And it's that excessive movement through the back that causes a lot of the problems that we see. So you can still use the toilet, but again, it has you in a better position. There's a girl, is it Julia Enders with that book Gut? Talks about like it's a better position to be in deep hip flexion, going to the toilet. But it also then, those countries don't have as much like reported back pain, surgeries for their hip or their back, because they're moving the way we're naturally designed to move through the ankle and through the hip. And then the back then has to do less of the movement because they're keeping that range of motion. So that's something to be considerate of.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, well, there you go. There's a fun fact for you.
Yeah.
I was actually at the Philippines a few weeks ago, and there was a lack of toilet seats there. So maybe that explains why not many of them had back pain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you're going to have to explain to your wife why you've taken out the toilets in your house and there's a hole in the bathroom. But as I said, even if it was, maybe you can get those little steps to start with. But it's just an interesting fact. And it just gets us that idea of like, okay, can we restore the range of motion? You know, maybe holding onto a banister of your stairs. I wouldn't recommend going to the toilet then. But holding on a banister of stairs, keeping your back straight, but just trying to go as low as you can to really open up and get those hips moving correctly again.
All right, Owen. Well, thanks for sharing all the tips and the insight. We'll try to keep things simple and practical here. Is there anything else you wanted to share to the guys listening regarding back pain at all? Any other tips or suggestions for them?
No, I think sometimes we're better off if you can look at things that you're doing during the day, just to try to take some pressure off. And then scheduling your stuff that like, okay, can I have good movement? Can I move through the back, hips, have better stability through the back, better movement at the ankle, say, and then use that programming of like good kind of core stability up to good like work capacity or anatomical adaptation before going for like maximum strength. That will really help.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. And guys, like if you are experiencing back pain, right, please get on top of it, because, even, if you're 30 or even 40, you're only, halfway through your life. So it's important that you manage it well. And even if you don't have back pain, right, try and do things proactively. I know for men, if you don't feel the pain, we do nothing about it, but try and get on top of it early. Take some of the suggestions that Eoin has said, even if you're not feeling the back pain, with whether it be getting a stand-up desk, using that towel just to get your posture right, train the body and the muscles and the mind on how you should be sitting at your desk because you're spending so long there, or doing that 5-minute walk in the morning. If you can do more, it's even better, or during a lunch break, going away from your desk every hour. Just simple things like that is going to help the longevity and mobility with your back, so that way you can perform at your maximum. You can be more active with your kids and your grandkids as you get older. Because a common complaint I hear with grandfathers is trying to get off the floor after playing with their kids is a struggle, right? So simple things like that. Just think of the future and just apply some of the tips that Eoin's mentioned here. Go back and watch the tips. And if you're listening to the podcast via audio, feel free to watch the YouTube and have a look at the actual demonstrations that he showed us as well, and write them down and start practicing. And once you get into a routine, make it consistent, right? I have a morning routine. When I wake up, I have certain exercises that I do, just basic stuff on the floor. It takes me 5 to 10 minutes, but it sets me up for the day. I've got a stand-up desk and I've got a few other things in my office, and that helps me perform at my maximum all day long. I do 12-hour plus days, so I want to make sure I maximize my day and make sure that I'm looking after my body as well, so I can keep doing this for years to come.
Can I just say one thing? Yeah. Sorry, thanks so much. I have this quiz. It's free, so it's on my website, BackAwareBelt.com. And if you just say take the back quiz, it will just give you like an idea. So you just have to answer these questions, and then it will just give you an idea of like what's most likely causing your pain, and then we'll send you a few emails about like what you should be doing about that. Okay, so that might be something for people to start. So it's backawarebelt.com/pages/quiz. So backawarebelt.com/pages/quiz.
All right,
Andrew, thanks so much for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
No, sure. I'll put that in the show notes. You're also the founder of the BackAware belt as well. So you just want to tell everyone it's an interesting concept, and you're the only one that's come up with this. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm actually working on another. We have a good few patents on it, but I'm working on another one today. It's basically like I'd give people exercises to do and they'd be doing them completely incorrectly, or I'd see people's form in the gym and I was always like, if they could see or feel what I saw or felt, they'd never lift that way. So then it's like, well, how do we do that? So it's a belt you wear. You can see your position, your back position on the screen as you exercise, and it vibrates when you go into a poor position. So if you are doing lifts, you're kind of doing them correctly. So yeah, a lot of heartache and a lot of money gone into getting it right, but we just have the newest versions just ready to go. I've got about 1 million different meetings today to just sort it out. So exciting times though, and that's the BackAware belt.
It's a great idea. If you are interested, what's the website? BackAware.com?
BackAwareBelt.com. I have BackAware as well.com, but I just need to forward it to that. I need to set it up.
All right. Well, thanks again, Eoin, for joining us. Everyone, make sure you apply at least one of these tips, if not more. And check out the belt if you're interested in that. Do that quiz as well, just to get an idea of what your back's like. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you like this, if you found it useful, please like this video if you're watching on YouTube. And also, if you know anyone else that would benefit from this video, just share it with them as well, so they can get some free tips about easing the back pain or preventing it as well. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and thanks again, Eoin. Bye.
Thanks guys. Thank you, Andrew. Take care.